Good morning and afternoon. Welcome to this webinar hosted by InMobi. My name is Rajesh Pantina and I lead the marketing efforts for InMobi in Asia Pacific, and I'm your host for today. Please try logging off and signing in again in case of any issues that you are facing, or drop our team a note using the chat window and we'll take it from there. Before we start, a quick note on house rules. We will take questions at the end of the webinar. You can add them using the questions tool window that you see on the dashboard, and we will take it from there. Now moving on, for those of you who are attending an InMobi webinar for the first time, as a quick introduction, the InMobi Group's mission is to power intelligent, mobile-first experiences for enterprises and consumers. Our businesses across advertising, marketing, and content are shaping consumer experiences in a world of connected devices. The group's portfolio companies include InMobi Marketing Cloud, Glance, the world's first Screen Zero, and Roposo, which is India's own short-form video app. The InMobi Group has been recognized on both the 2018 and 2019 CNBC Disruptor 50 list and as one of Fast Company's 2018 World's Most Innovative Companies, among other laurels. And at InMobi, we regularly host a series of events, meetups, and webinars across the globe to share best practices and learnings. Now, I'm really glad that in today's webinar titled Harnessing the Power of Consumer Intelligence, we are joined by Cinny Little from Forrester and Abhinav Mohan from InMobi Pulse. I'll do a quick introduction before handing it to the both of them. Cinny is the principal analyst at Forrester and serves customer insights professionals covering the skills and ways of working that are required to build a culture of data activation. She helps market research or consumer intelligence, digital analytics, customer analytics, market and competitive intelligence, and business analyst professionals drive more value from their work. She researches multiple facets, including data storytelling, insights and analytics strategy, organizational design, process, roles and talent development, and finally vendor evaluation. Abhinav, who is from InMobi, is a mobile marketer with experience handling global businesses across mobile advertising and mobile research. He is the founding member of InMobi Pulse and has been the general manager of the product since inception. Coming from a MarTech background, Abhinav is looking to bring a fresh lens of technology to reimagine research solutions which would enable brands and agencies globally to answer business questions in this digital era. Now, before the speakers start, I just run you through the agenda. They together will help you understand the criticality of consumer intelligence for businesses today, especially given the times we are in. Understand how and what are the latest in consumer intelligence technology. Introduce InMobi Pulse to all of you. And finally, share examples of how brands are leveraging InMobi Pulse as a mobile consumer intelligence platform. Over to you, Cindy.
Thanks very much, Rajesh. It's great to be here with everybody today. I'm looking forward to talking to you about how urgent it is that we move at the speed of the consumer with AI-enabled consumer intelligence technology. What we'll be talking about as I deeper dive of what's really going on and why you and your business stakeholders need to care about driving more actions and decisions from your work. That's what the value of your work is. And then we'll dive into technologies and have a couple of takeaways at the end. Why consumer intelligence? Here's what the challenges are for firms today, and it's even more so in today's challenging times. I'm seeing client after client being able to respond more easily to the rapid changes in your customers and consumers' needs in these times, and these technologies help with that. They help us work at speed and scale across organizational silos. Our customers don't care about our organizational silos, and it's critical that we're able to work that way. And companies are relatively immature in their use of technology in consumer intelligence. And so the capabilities that these technologies have are to show me the way, and even more importantly, show me something I didn't know and that I wasn't looking for. So let's dig in. Your consumers want what they want, where and when they want it, and they don't get their ideas primarily about that from you. And also, data matters to everyone's work. When I say data throughout this presentation today, I mean quantitative and qualitative, quote, data from inside your firm, data from outside your firm, all different kinds of data. Data matters to everyone's work, and the insights from it are what are important, but the bottom line is that the value from data only comes when it's used for decision making that improves the customer experience such that it improves your business outcomes. And that's a problem in the world today still. Only 49% of business decisions are made using quantitative information. And that is based on a Forrester survey of global analytics decision makers that sit in businesses as well as technology departments. So it's really a problem that this number has not changed since 2016. While companies are continuing their spend on data and technology, there's a mismatch here, and it looks like this. The job to be done by an insights-driven organization is using data to deliver on insights we act on everywhere in the firm, but firms are relatively immature with this. This is the problem. I'm going to give you just one example of why you need to care about being at a more advanced level of being an insights-driven firm. And this is a data point from that survey that I mentioned before. Advanced level insights-driven businesses are 1.6 times more likely to act on insights at scale, meaning across organizational silos, that gives them significant differentiation within the markets they compete in. And that's reflected, we've seen data from the same survey in their revenue, their efficiencies, and a wide range of other accomplishments that are outperforming other firms. So let's dive in now to consumer intelligence technologies. What's the difference between consumer versus customer intelligence? I'm going to only look at one or two of these points here. Let's look at use cases on the left-hand side. And in consumer intelligence, they'll tend to be being applied, the insights will tend to be being applied to innovation, white space, and trend areas, experience design, and product, quote, job to be done, learning more about how our consumers might want to use our product versus how they're using it now, where segmentation is more specific to things like special marketing experience and things along those lines. Forrester published a market landscape of these technologies in May 2020. And for the rest of the time I'm speaking today, I will be referring to findings from this market landscape that I published. Let's first start with my lengthy but useful definition about AI-enabled consumer intelligence technologies. These are solutions that use a range of data and information types. And remember my very broad definition of data, including internal and external, structured, unstructured, could be video, could be images, and more. That data is combined and used for identifying and exploring trends and insights about consumers. And the ways that these technologies do this is they apply artificial intelligence and machine learning for extracting insights from the data and displaying the insights to end users without them requiring programming skills or help from IT. And users then leverage exploration features to discover trends and communicate actionable insights to stakeholders via dashboards or reports, and or in some, but not all cases, applications they already, quote, live in within their firm, such as Slack or Salesforce. So that's my definition of these solutions. The solutions have different technology roots. They may have started as a social listening or a customer feedback management or a voice of the customer technology or others that you see here, but have pivoted at least either completely or to some extent in working on the consumer intelligence use cases and category. I'm not going to read everything on this slide, but these are the vendors that I covered in my market landscape, and you'll see at the top the categorization that I did, that we do with late stage, growth stage, and early stage, and the specifics of how I did that categorization had to do with company tenure, how long they'd been around, funding, and headcount, and I also considered revenue in this segmentation. So technology vendors that I covered and put into this landscape fall into three categories by their go-to-market approach. Those that provide a platform, a software platform, that's a self-service solution for the customer end users to identify actionable insights. And then there are two categories of service provider: a hybrid platform service provider that sells a software solution along with customer services that might be helping out where there's short-handedness in employees to do the work, and primarily service provider. In other words, the company gets most of their revenue from services, but do have to have, for me to include them, a platform that the customer accesses themselves. Targeted user roles look like this. I have the vendors that I included in my landscape filled out a massive survey to provide insights for me into helping you with what the technologies are and what they do. And when I asked who their primary users were, this is the list that I saw. And the words that you see in the sub-bullet list are the exact words that were on the survey. So not surprisingly, market research, customer or consumer insights folks are the primary users of the solution, but you see some diversity too in the other areas of firms that are using these vendors' solutions. So these solutions, as I said, help end users, business decision makers, or market research customer insights professionals cut to the chase with what they need to be doing. Remember that the value of insights from data comes from decision making and driving actions that matter to business outcomes, and that's what these solutions do. So some examples of features of the type of insights that are provided by these solutions include providing a relevancy score or recommendation when doing a search on the platform, based on what the platform knows about what you need to know. And most of these solutions deliver multiple analytics types, which may include explanatory recommendations about what happened from the data, diagnostic insights about why it happened, and predictive or prescriptive insights at the most mature level of a firm's capabilities in this area, of a solution's capabilities. And bottom line, they deliver insights that power decision making, depending on, of course, the solution's data capabilities. There's a wide difference across solutions in that, and I'll talk about that when speaking about how you choose a solution. So a solution has to deliver multiple insights types, which may include the following, including those delivered by natural language generation. So summarization, geography and location detection, concepts and topics, and then other high-level types of insights types, from trends to sentiment and emotion. So here's how to think about selecting a solution that best fits your needs. Here are some observations I have to guide your decision making. Consumer intelligence tends to be a priority for multiple areas in your firm, so you want to consider that when selecting a solution. You may be able to expand use of a platform your firm already has, though I find that to be less frequent, and your current capabilities should influence your selection. For instance, remember the categorization that I had of firms that I included in the research that I published, where it's about a platform that end users will use, sure, with some help from the technology company, but you may need more help than that to get started, in which case you'd want to look at a solution that has some services, more services that you might be able to need, or even a primarily services approach. That's totally up to where you are in your journey to get value out of consumer intelligence. So takeaways that I have are your focus must be, as I've repeated it multiple times on purpose, on delivering insights from data for decision making. And you want to leverage consumer intelligence solutions exploration features to discover trends and communicate actionable insights to stakeholders with dashboards or reports. And those discoveries that you have may be things that you're working to apply to decision making, or that you're exploring to learn something you didn't know and to help your stakeholders do more for consumers. And finally, you want to select the vendor go-to-market model that best meets your needs. So what you want to do is drive more actions from insights together with the solution and with your stakeholders. So thank you. I'd like to pass it over to Abhinav now.
Thanks a lot, Cinny, for taking us through the challenges that businesses face in getting actionable insights and how the new age consumer intelligence platforms are helping. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be presenting here in front of all of you guys today. Now, while Cinny has covered the impact of consumer intelligence on businesses, I think it's also very important to approach it from the viewpoint of a consumer. At InMobi, we believe that long-term brand success requires a healthy consumer relationship. And with any relationship, it is important to not only talk, but also to listen. Today's consumer learns, evolves, and takes action that is too fast for many of us to keep up, let alone get ahead of. They are always on and have more control than ever before over the brands that they choose to engage with. Successful brands today need to use consumer intelligence platform, not just to build a deep understanding of consumers, but also to engage and acquire them. They need to leverage the always-on dimension of the consumer, translate the data into actionable insights, and design communications that build a real connection with the consumer. That's exactly the core philosophy with which InMobi Pulse was built about 2.5 years back. InMobi Pulse is the leading mobile consumer intelligence platform which helps brands to identify, understand, engage, and acquire consumers. There are three key tenets that define us. We are mobile first, AI powered, and secure and privacy compliant. Let's look at all three of them in a little more detail. The first one is being mobile first. In a world where mobile is now the primary device for a user, we believe that it's extremely important to not be mobile optimized, but be mobile first. This has a huge impact on not just how you access consumers, but also how you interact with them. Using always-on mobile signals, we collect more than 100 passive and stated data signals from consumers. And being mobile first also helps us gather intelligence at scale. We have a massive user reach of about 620 million users in APAC and about 1.5 billion users globally. Now, there are two major challenges that the consumer insights industry is facing at this point of time. The first one is, how do you ensure that the data that you're collecting is validated and correct, especially if the data that you're collecting is stated data or consumer feedback? We all know that stated data typically has like the lowest confidence level when it comes to validity of data sources, but it is one of the most widely used as well. And secondly, if assuming your data is correct, how do you translate that data into actionable insights? And that's where being AI powered becomes critical. Our patent pending technology takes in more than 30 plus data points of a user, including demographics, technographic, and gyroscopic signals, feeds all of them into a machine learning algorithm and churns out a validity score of a user. We then showcase how many responses or how many users have been rejected and for what reasons. All of this is shown on our self-serve platform, which can be seen on the screen as well. This means that for the first time in the industry, one is able to build high confidence on stated consumer data and show that transparently to the client as well. Now, having validated the consumer feedback, our platform then showcases out-of-the-box insights from all the data that we've collected to minimize the work that people have to do manually. Now, we've talked a lot about accessing users at scale and collecting and analyzing their feedback, but all of this cannot be possible unless done in a secure and privacy-compliant manner. And that's where our third tenet comes into play, being a cloud-based, secure, and privacy-compliant platform. We are a CCPA and GDPR-compliant platform that is built on the top of goodness of Microsoft Azure. So all the examples that you will see going forward would have been executed while keeping this core tenet in mind. Before we move on to different solutions that we have for brands, I think it's important to quickly understand the core infrastructure and the core technology that we use to collect consumer feedback. Now, being part of InMobi Group, we leverage the core AdTech infrastructure of the company. Through our SDK, we access more than 30,000 apps and around 1.5 billion users globally. Whenever a user opens one of our apps that we are partnered up with, we get an opportunity to showcase an asset to that particular user. Now, that asset might be a full screen ad, a video, or in our case, a survey as well. We compete with multiple other bids from both within the InMobi exchange and from other exchanges as well. And if we win that bid, we show a survey to that user within the app environment itself. So if you see the example on the screen, a user within an app gets to see a survey, the user completes the survey within the app environment and lands up in exactly the same place within the app post-completion. Now, while there are multiple different ways in which brands are leveraging InMobi Pulse, we would go through 3 key solutions in this webinar. What is interesting about these solutions is that each solution is not just unique to a set of industries, but also covers the use case for multiple different teams within the organization. So our solution for retail brands that leverages real-time location signals is not only important for the insights team, but also customer experience professionals, retail managers, and channel managers as well. Similarly, the seed audiences solution for CPG and other offline brands links media teams, insights, and data sciences together, thereby bringing CMI, brand managers, media managers, and data sciences teams together. Our third solution is key for mobile-first brands and can span multiple functions across insights, product management, user experience, and category management as well. So through all of this, we are able to democratize the insights to a broader audience and drive very good decision-making. So let's deep dive into our first solution, real-time intelligence using location polygon for retail. We all know that commerce has shifted dramatically over the years, from the mail order catalogs to e-commerce and now to mobile. Today's world can no longer be described as simple offline or online or mobile. It's actually a convergence of the physical and the digital. A lot of people call it phygital. Consumers are in stores, and within stores, they're searching online, whether on Google or Amazon, and then still potentially purchasing within the store itself. In spite of this, the retail industry faces a lot of last mile challenges. Due to the lack of in-the-moment consumer feedback, brands are facing a challenge knowing their in-store shopper experience, understanding the visual merchandising and brand visibility, and generally lack confidence in staff influence and recommendation to shoppers. And the primary reason for this is the existing inefficient methods of collecting user feedback. Face-to-face data collection through survey recruiters or brand promoters can lead to both high costs and high lead times to collect meaningful user feedback. This method has now been disrupted even further due to the pandemic situation. Contactless research is now table stakes for brands, and low footfall in stores coupled with inefficient face-to-face feedback mechanisms can lead to further last-mile challenges for retail brands. So the question remains, how do you deterministically capture in-the-moment feedback from the relevant audience? This is where brands have been leveraging InMobi Pulse for collecting real-time intelligence using location polygons. Now, through the InMobi exchange, we collect deep location data about our consumers, ranging from a minimum to a city level to a maximum of exact GPS lat long with 10-meter accuracy. Using this, we create multiple different user segments on the basis of where the user is or where the user has been in the last X number of days. These segments can then be targeted with a survey to collect direct consumer feedback. And that feedback is then combined with all the passive data that we already have about that particular user. And hence we create a holistic understanding of the in-store shopper. Is the staff knowledgeable enough, or is giving appropriate recommendations or not? Is my brand visible to the consumer? Is my brand activation turning out to be effective or not? How is the overall experience of the in-store shopper, both in my own store and also in that of my competitors? These are just some of the questions that can be answered using this methodology. To bring this to light, let's look at how Lenovo worked with us to solve for benchmarking their in-store shopper experience across multiple countries and store formats as well. Using the location polygon capability, Lenovo could target not just the consumers that were walking into their own exclusive outlet, but also those who were going to multi-branded and large retail format stores. And these are the stores where they had little to no control. They could then collect feedback from these users in real time and get a better understanding of multiple different parameters. Staff recommendation, promotional material within the store, demo products available, purchase intent of users walking into the store, and in general, the overall in-store experience. Thanks to the accuracy and scale that InMobi Pulse brought to the table, Lenovo was able to benchmark their retail outlets across countries and with their competitor brands as well at 4x the speed as compared to traditional methods. Let's look at a different solution, but again for offline brands, where we use seed audiences to build personalization at scale. Meet Rachel. She's a typical TG for a CPG company that comes out after a deep segmentation exercise. As fellow marketers, I'm sure most of you have spent a lot of time in your career working on profiles like these. Spent many hours looking at the behavioral and psychographic attributes of a consumer, poured over a lot of data to really understand what makes a consumer tick. Ideally, everything that the marketing team does in an organization is dependent on this TG. Whether it is deciding on marketing communication or channel of marketing, segmentation is the holy grail for them. And one of the key ways to action on this is to target Rachel on media sources. Guess who they find? Our dear friend Rachel is female, 25 to 45, with a Nielsen DAR score of 80% plus. Rather underwhelming, isn't it? Moreover, due to the lack of signals, Rachel ends up receiving ads which clearly don't work for her. Now, I know that the contrast is a little too extreme, but it really brings out the issue with media today. Offline media solves for scale, but does not solve for accuracy. Digital media, on the other hand, is rich with demographic and location data, but has limited behavioral or psychographic data sets. Now, obviously, media companies and data companies like InMobi are working on getting more behavioral data sets, to understand the who, the where, when, and how of a consumer. But, the fundamental question of why still remains non-targetable at scale. And that leads us to the question, how can the brand deliver personalized brand experience at scale? Well, the answer is seed audiences. Let's take an example. Unilever was facing a very similar challenge in Philippines with the liquid detergent brand called Breeze. With Philippines being predominantly a detergent powders and bars market, liquid detergent captured less than 5% market share. Being a low involvement category and with behavior entrenched over decades, it was extremely challenging for the brand to change behavior for new format adoption. Unilever knew that in order to change this entrenched behavior, generic and broad-based messaging would not suffice. While digital native companies have been investing in hyper-targeted and personalized campaigns for a long time, offline companies have always faced the challenge in building a single point of view about the consumer. And all of that has been because of the lack of both first-party and third-party data sets. So how can Unilever look at running personalized media campaigns considering they lack this consumer data? Well, the first step for them was to understand the TG in a much deeper fashion. Well, working with InMobi Pulse, we looked at demographic data of the consumers and combined it with behavioral data points like modes of washing, barriers to usage, needs from the product, etc. This gave us 3 key segments to target. Bargain hunters who were price conscious, skeptics who were happy with their current laundry solution, and laggards who were slow decision makers. We had found our research results. But how do we now target them on media, considering the first step was just a plain segmentation exercise? Well, that's where being a mobile-first programmatic network helps. The core identity of a user on mobile is a device ID. Our survey collected data from 11,500 users, and hence we had 11,500 device IDs at our disposal. But we knew so much more about these consumers. Considering we see them across multiple mobile apps, different locations, different times of the day, days of the week, etc., we had a rich profile already built up. These users served as a seed audience, and their data was fed into our machine learning algorithms. This was then used to find new users that share traits with these seed audiences. Through this lookalike technology, we were able to expand these 11,500 users to a scaled audience of 1.5 million users in each of these three segments. But that was just a job half done. The next task was to ensure that we deliver ads that specifically spoke to each segment's needs and concerns. Let's take the first creative here. It resonates perfectly with the bargain hunter as it talks about price efficiency. But how does this work for a skeptic? In all likelihood, it can do further damage since skeptics are looking for quality, and sometimes price efficiency can be perceived as being opposite to quality. Same is true for other creatives as well, which would work for one segment, but not necessarily for the others. Keeping this in mind, we showcased customized creatives to each of the three segments. But the question still remained, did any of this make any difference? Well, clearly, personalization did make a difference. Through the brand lift study, and we ran 3 different brand lift studies for each of these segments, Unilever found out that around 33% of the users intended to purchase the product post being exposed to the ad. Moreover, we had hit the holy grail. Unilever also saw a year-on-year jump of 30% and 25% for the 2 months following the campaign respectively, thereby indicating that the personalized campaign drove a positive uplift among the Filipinos. Now, we all know that now Unilever leveraged the seed audiences solution to send personalized messaging to non-users of their brand. And this was on the basis of barriers of usage. But this methodology can now be used in multiple other use cases as well. For example, a hair care brand can use this to acquire competition users by showcasing customized product benefits. So, for example, anti-hair fall versus anti-dandruff. Or an OTT platform can show genre-specific titles based on the content preferences of user. Or a company with multiple different brands can upsell different products to increase cross-category usage. Each industry has a use case of its own, and it's up to us to be able to use each of these use cases creatively. Let's turn this around completely and look at a completely different industry, mobile-first brands. We know that mobile-first brands have tons of first-party user data. So at any point of time, they shouldn't have any issue with respect to understanding the user, right? Let's deep dive into this. We all use OTT platforms pretty religiously, and platforms like Netflix hyper-personalize the content recommendation basis the first-party data sets that they have. We all would have experienced that, and frankly, we all love Netflix for it. But what about a new user? Someone like my dad, where there is no user history. Well, him being based in India, Netflix decided to show him a lot of Hindi content on his feed. He wanted more variety, especially the English movies, so he decided to dip into My Profile. The results were disastrous. My Profile is now a mess. For Netflix, who I am is based on what I have watched on the platform. But that's not always the case. Let's take another example, this time of my wife. If you look at her Amazon purchase history, you would see that she's a low-value shopper in Amazon. And obviously, basis that, Amazon is showing her a bunch of stuff which they think is relevant for her, both in terms of product category and also in terms of price. That makes sense, right? But what if they knew that what she is on Amazon is not true for other shopping sites? What if they knew that she's actually a very premium shopper on fashion apps like Myntra? She does buy premium brands and is not always a discount shopper. What if Amazon had known that about her? Wouldn't this be an important information point for them to be able to upsell Amazon fashion and maybe also increase her overall lifetime value? And that's the fundamental challenge that mobile-first brands face today. Mobile-first brands have so much user data, but the story is still incomplete for them. It's understandable that every user is not the same for them because they have so much information about the user, right from demographics to financial data to location data. The entire user set is divided into multiple micro segments. And ideally, each micro segment needs to be treated differently. But more granular the segment, more difficult it is to get a 360-degree view of a consumer. And that's exactly the challenge that Swiggy was facing as well. For those of you who might not know, Swiggy is the largest and the most valuable food tech player in India and does more than 1 million orders per day. While Swiggy obviously knew a lot about their consumers, their first level of segmentation was based on the stage of the app consumer journey. To solve for retention holistically, Swiggy had to segment users basis where they are on their app consumer journey and then get to know so much more about them. Each micro segment, as we call it, had to be understood in a different way, and hence different questions needed to be asked to each of these different micro segments. Let's take an example. Based on an industry report, around 77% of users who download an app do not come after day one. As you know, brands spend incredible amount of money to acquire users, and such a high churn rate at such an early stage is a huge problem for them. Not only are these users not purchasing anything in the app, they are not even registering, which means that Swiggy doesn't have any email ID or phone number to connect with them. How can Swiggy get a better understanding of the consumer profile if there's no way to connect with them? How can they better understand what the barriers to usage are, such that they can make relevant product or user experience or even operational changes to retain more users at such an early stage? Imagine the kind of ROI that they would be able to get from this. That's where InMobi Pulse came into action. To get user feedback at a micro segment level, InMobi Pulse could ingest non-PII device IDs of users at a micro segment level. We could then find these users programmatically on the InMobi exchange, bid for those users on the basis of obviously the data that the client has given us, the passive mobile data that we already had about these users, and all the previous survey information as well, and serve them an in-app mobile survey to collect user responses. This survey data was combined with the first-party data given to us by the client and also the passive data that we already had. And combining all three could give us a 360-degree view of the micro segment in an aggregated and anonymized fashion. As a result, Swiggy could get a better understanding and hence ROI from a set of users who were literally a black box for them. We did this for multiple other microsegments as well. So let's take an example of dormant users who were users that had not used the app in the last 30 days or more. Now, they were also retargeted, but the aim this time was to understand which channel of marketing is the most effective for them. And within this particular cohort, which channel of marketing is the most effective for each of the microsegment as well. And we also wanted to understand how do they perceive Swiggy as compared to an active user. The third set of microsegment in this case was an active user. Through this activity, Swiggy was able to understand the TV viewing habits and preferred programs for these users. And the idea was to then target these users on offline channels like TV. Now, while the above examples have worked for one brand in one country, the methodology itself is scalable to all mobile-first brands across any country. Whether it is a cab-hailing super app talking to its high-value users, and the idea for them is to do category upsell, or a global app getting feedback from its early adopters, and the idea for them is to optimize the product, the possibilities are endless. So in conclusion, we know that firms need to be able to blend their offline and online worlds together to derive insights that matter and democratize decision-making. But they cannot be doing this alone. They need to partner up with an AI-enabled consumer intelligence platform that bridges data with emotional storytelling and enables faster insight and drives impact and outcomes. This can be done even better on mobile, which can help capture always-on intelligence at scale, accelerate data to insights journey, and ensure privacy and security compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Cinny and Abhinav, for those insightful presentations. At this point, we have a lot of questions that are pouring in. Quickly, Cinny, the first question for you. So it says that they love the way they outline the challenges and capabilities that businesses should be looking at. But how do you see people actually selling their work into the C-suite, specifically getting the backing for investment in consumer intelligence solutions In that case, how do you go about it?
Oh, that's a great question. Wow, that's a really good one. I see two ways that this happens. The first way is from the top down, from the C-suite down. And in these times where there's very rapid change in the external and internal aspects of a company's business, it's not unusual during the pandemic times, and this will last for a while, to see the C-suite coming to you out of the blue, as it were, and requiring you to do some work there. I see that all the time. One of the things to do is take advantage of that. Obviously, deliver very high quality work so that you and change your way of working to be able to enable decision making faster. And the second way is doing it from within. And I'll just say very briefly, what that takes is knowing which of your stakeholders are actually using your work to make decisions that matter, and you're using great data storytelling and presenting it to them to drive more of that, and make sure that you do some, quote, internal marketing, as it will, on those stakeholders that are actually using your work so that other stakeholders see what you can do.
Thanks, Cinny. That is actually some actionable advice over there. Again, sticking with you, Cinny, people are asking if, given the data quality is probably the most important factor when you look at consumer intelligence, how do you see the industry evolving to address this particular factor of data quality?
Sure, that's a good one too. And of course, data quality is really important. You have to be able to trust the data. A key dynamic is one that Abhinav talked about in respect to privacy compliant data. That's really critical, and it absolutely changes the way firms need to work versus ways that they've worked in the past. So I think actually that's a dynamic that's really important for folks to take into account depending on the type of consumer work that they've done in the past. So of course, all the vendors that are working in this way are looking at the quality of the data. It's just a generalization and really hard to give specifics about necessarily. Abhinav did a great job of talking about how InMobi Pulse supports that.
Thanks. That's a nice segue. In fact, Abhinav, there's a quick question to say that now when you're calling out something as mobile consumer intelligence, what's really different than traditional CI solutions? I think there were a couple of examples, but if you could reiterate, that would be great.
Yeah, sure, Rajesh. Yeah, I think, we covered a few examples in the presentation, but, if I were to choose, let's say top 2 or 3, let's talk a little bit about those 2-3 pointers, right? Now, we all know that mobile is the primary device for a user. And if you think about APAC as a market, internet penetration is growing with mobile, right? So consumers are actually leapfrogging from offline to internet for the first time on mobile itself, especially in countries like India, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, etc. So there is no better way to reach a user than a mobile, right? So the kind of reach, the kind of frequency of consumer connect that mobile can provide is something that no other traditional methodology can provide. So if you are able to build on top of that reach and that frequency and that connect, the quality of insights that you can gather, the quality of the data that you can gather is much superior as compared to traditional CI. That's one part of it. Related to that is, and related to the quality of data that I was talking about, is the amount of data and the kind of signals that you get from mobile as well, right? So we talked a little bit about the signals that InMobi Pulse uses. So whether it is location data that we get from users, technographic data like handset, OS, or even gyroscopic signals like, whether the user is walking, sitting down, lying down, orientation of the phone, etc. There are multiple different signals that we can get from users, obviously in a privacy compliant manner, but it's up to the CI firm to be able to really use that very innovatively, right? That's something again that you cannot get through traditional CI methodologies. And the third part, and this is also something that we covered briefly in one of the solutions, the third part is being able to stitch together multiple different data points from multiple different sources due to the single identity of a user on mobile, right? So we talked about device ID being a single identity user, whether we get data about that user from first party through your own app or as a publisher, through second party, through someone like a telecom provider, the third party data set, through multiple different data providers in general. If we tie all of them together, we can get a 360-degree view again on mobile that you will not be able to get on traditional consumer intelligence platforms. So those are the three key differences that I wanted to talk about.
Great, great. Now, given that you've talked about three fundamental pillars or something that helps differentiate the platform, there is a question which kind of is a follow-up piece, which is how do you see Pulse therefore evolving in future to address the needs of brands and probably marketeers and a bunch of other professionals you called out?
Yeah, that's a great question, and obviously, our roadmap and our evolution is something that we are constantly thinking about. We look at what is possible from a technology perspective, what other people are doing in the market, what is the need of our clients and marketers, and then deciding on the roadmap. There are 2-3 points that typically stand out. One is, we are looking to, as a mobile first platform, looking to integrate with multiple other platforms out there for different use cases so that we can, we can solve for use cases, again, not just for 1 or 2 teams within an organization, but multiple different teams within an organization. So to just give you an example, we very recently integrated with the Trade Desk, which is, as you guys would know, one of the largest programmatic DSPs out there. Right. The idea there is that, they are a programmatic DSP, we are a programmatic sampling network. We combine forces, integrated at a platform level such that any marketer or any media company running media campaigns on Trade Desk can now do brand measurement on the same platform at a much cost-efficient and a better efficacy manner on Trade Desk itself using InMobi Pulse, right? So that's the kind of partnership that we are looking at a platform level. This is just one example, but we are looking to sort of spread our wings across multiple different platforms and see how can we capture multiple different teams in an organization. That's part one. The other one is trying to sort of go deeper when it comes to our access of consumers. Now, being mobile first, we have obviously scaled. We obviously have a lot of scale in terms of number of users. But there is still an opportunity to go deeper in terms of the kind of access that we have with consumers, right? So is there a way that, we can connect with consumers or the same consumer multiple times within the same day, right? Is there a way that I can get a better glimpse of the life of that particular consumer? Is there a way where I can build a platform where brands can connect with these consumers and ask them questions and get answers real time? Or even do deeper conversations, not just on surveys, but interviews and focus group discussions, all within the platform itself. So that's the second path that we are taking, trying to get deeper connections with our consumers.
Thanks, Abhinav. Cinny, quick one for you. So what should CI or brand professionals look for in a new tech CI solution that you've called up?
Sure. So if that's a really good question too. If this is the first time that the firm is looking for a technology solution for the use cases that we've been talking about today, optimally you want to start with the key use cases that you're already serving in terms of people, as I have repeated, making decisions with the research and other aspects that you provide. Now that might sound counterintuitive, but it's the way to get adoption. People will see the platform being used and will want to use it for different use cases. And you as the CI or brand professional can be doing that internal marketing that makes that happen. So that's, I think, the best way to think about it. If there is already a solution being used in one part of your firm, but you're not using it as a CI or brand professional, you might want to be looking at that. And the third piece is the piece I said before, that you need to think in terms of the capabilities that you have to drive value from the solution, and look at where you feel confident that with the self-service that a platform provides, you're all good because it's the way you work now, and that's true of many firms. But if you need more services help, either ask that platform vendor if they can provide it, or look at some of the hybrid service platform solutions.
Thanks a lot, Cinny. I think we have just time to squeeze in one last question. Abhinav, this is for you. So while there were numerous examples about application of Pulse, so how does Pulse help democratize decision making among companies, right? So if you could just illustrate that.
Yeah, sure, Rajesh. I think that's a great question. So honestly, that was one key problem that we were trying to solve when we started InMobi Pulse about 2.5 years back. What we realized was that when people are looking at answering hypotheses, and obviously marketing teams build a lot of different hypotheses and want to sort of validate those hypotheses. The biggest blocker is the entire process of getting feedback, right? So whether it is signing up with a vendor, floating RFQs, registration, working with a specialist team, getting data in a particular format, converting that, data from one format to the other, and then getting the insights, right? So we wanted to basically disrupt that entire thing, and we said, let's launch a platform which, marketers, researchers, channel managers, retail managers, anybody can come to, ask the questions that they want answers to, float it to the kind of target audience that they want answers from, and then get the responses within hours or days, right? In obviously a cost efficient and accurate manner. That's what we started off with. Obviously, over the last 2.5 years, we've evolved massively. So that's something which is, our previous hypothesis obviously still continuing, but we have built a lot of solutions on top of our platform to be able to democratize consumer intelligence. So we talked a little bit about seed audiences, where media teams, consumer intelligence teams, and data sciences teams in a particular organization are coming together to be able to start something right from segmentation to end with marketing ROI with media targeting, right? That's the 360-degree sort of circle that gets completed, which was always broken previously. Or when we are talking about getting a full view of a consumer for mobile first brands, right? That insight is something that product managers are using to understand what to do on their app. Customer experience managers are using to understand how do they better improve their customer experience. In fact, even city managers, supply managers are using to understand, in my city or in my particular region, are users, getting the right supply or not? Are they getting the right service or not, etc. Right? So it's the insight might be one, but it's being used by multiple people in the organization purely because of the touch points that we have.
Thank you, Abhinav. So thanks a lot, Cinny. Thank you, Abhinav, for the really insightful presentation and some direction for all the brands, all the marketeers, customer experience, customer insights professionals out there on how to leverage and harness the power of consumer intelligence. Just a note for all the audience that's present, you will get a copy of the deck, the webinar recording, and the official reprint in your inbox in a week's time. You can look forward to that from InMobi team. And you can reach out to us at mobilemarketing@inmobi.com in case of any further question. Thanks a lot for joining us today. See you in another one. Thank you and bye.